Douglas County's latest law enforcement push targets one type of crime victims if they don't come forward to report.
We are ending the look the other way era.
President Trump says the economy is strong. An anonymous survey of Colorado's business leaders says otherwise. A potential crackdown on dual citizens challenges what it means to be a loyal American. And a word about why Phillip Rivers returning to football is good for Broncos fans and for one aging newsman. A lot of news to cover. We'll try to land the plane tonight on Next. President Trump says that the American economy is strong and that concerns about affordability are a Democrat scam. Tell that to Colorado's business leaders and economic experts who are predicting slow economic growth and record uncertainty next year. CU's business school released its economic outlook for 2026 this week. Researchers there are predicting slow, almost flat job growth. They estimate the state will add about 17,000 jobs, less than 1% growth. Some job sectors, information, leisure and hospitality, business services, are even expected to lose jobs. Despite that, the report predicts state GDP will manage to grow nearly 3%, outpacing the national average. Business leaders surveyed said that they're concerned about economic risks, including Trump's tariffs and his immigration crackdown, along with inflation. Denver voters overwhelmingly chose to give more city employees the power to join unions and bargain with the city. A year later, City Council and the mayor can't agree on how to make that work, and they're running out of time before the new ordinance goes into effect next year. Some city employees already have collective bargaining rights: teachers, police, firefighters. Denverites voted to expand that power to most other city employees except elected officials and political appointees, supervisors, and folks at Denver Health. So starting next year, eligible employees could vote to unionize and start negotiating with the city. The mayor's office would have some power to stop strikes, declaring them illegal if they're deemed a threat to public safety or health. Unions could then challenge that decision in court. Mayor Mike Johnson says he supports collective bargaining for city workers, but his office is fighting several of the guidelines put forward by City Council. The mayor says making the city financially liable for unfair labor practice complaints and allowing unions to renegotiate their contracts mid-term could create financial issues.
We have a number of bargaining contracts to manage now. We'll have more in the future. If we added the prospect of renegotiating midterm with any number of those entities, could be significantly new costs and challenge for the city.
If my job duties were changed so significantly, as we've seen city employees' jobs change so significantly multiple times over the last 6 years, I might want to bargain again or open up a particular item.
Those changes are largely backed by progressives on City Council who were critical of citywide layoffs earlier this year. They're supposed to take a final vote next week. Mayor says he'd like to find a compromise by then. A bill introduced by Republicans in Washington would strip Americans of dual citizenship if they hold it, requiring somebody who wants to become a U.S. citizen or to just remain one to only have one passport. Our Angeline McCall looks at the implications.
In Washington, D.C., there's an effort to do away with dual citizenship, or when people can hold citizenship for the United States along with another country.
So the implications of dual citizenship questions or eliminating dual citizenship through legislation are pretty profound.
Immigration attorney Hans Meyer says it's less about what passports you hold, more about the sentiment.
And I think the real question is, can you have citizenship in another country and still have an allegiance to the United States? And in the immigration process, one of the primary things people have to do to become a citizen is swear allegiance to the United States.
If it passes, the bill would require dual citizens to write in and rescind their foreign citizenship to the Secretary of State. And those who don't comply will be assumed to voluntarily relinquish their U.S. citizenship.
People can have an allegiance to the United States and really want to be a U.S. citizen, but still love the place that they're from. And those two things can exist, and they're not necessarily mutually exclusive.
The government doesn't collect data on dual citizens. Meyer says that number is estimated to be in the millions, and the impact, he says, would be profound.
I don't think forcing a person to abandon part of their identity historically, prior to embracing becoming an American, necessarily serves, public interest. I don't think it serves necessarily the economy. And I don't think it ultimately makes the United States more safe or more of a unified country.
There are plenty of countries that don't allow dual citizens, Japan and India, just to name a couple, who prohibit it. Meyer says the countries that don't allow dual citizens, though, are in the minority, Kyle.
So, Angelina, I can see how it's one thing to say, like, if you're coming into the U.S., then you need to renounce that citizenship to get the U.S. citizenship. But how would the government go about figuring out who all native-born Americans have dual citizenship?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot of, concerns or questions remain as to how someone who currently holds dual citizenship would go about rescinding it. And how would a government that didn't issue that citizenship then rescind it on your behalf? Only technically the government that issues it could do so. So there's a lot of, logistics here that haven't really been hashed out yet.
All right, Angelina McCall, thank you. Douglas County's latest tough on crime stance is a crackdown on shoplifting. Not on shoplifters, but a crackdown on businesses that are not reporting enough shoplifters for law enforcement to go after. Our Marshall Zellinger asked county leaders why punishing stores that are the victim of thefts is the right approach.
We're not going to allow a culture where people walk out of a store with a stack of drills and nobody says a word.
That's called stealing, and it's already a crime. But Douglas County's conservative leaders believe liberal retail policies decided by corporate executives in big cities are giving shoplifters a free pass in places like Highlands Ranch. And they're intent on signaling a tough-on-crime approach with a brief jail stay for shoplifting.
If you come down here to steal from us, plan on staying.
But what Douglas County announced today has nothing to do with actual stealing, but the failure by a business to report a theft. Businesses that fail to report shoplifting within 4 days of it happening could face a fine of $50 for every day it did not report it, up to $1,000. How do you fine a business for not reporting shoplifting if it's never reported?
If events come to our attention that we need to engage on, if we have a business that is simply looking the other way, which results in additional calls for service for us to respond to, that's when this would come into effect.
It's not clear what calls for service Republican Sheriff Darren Weakley is referring to if the complaint is that stores are not calling for help with shoplifting. It's also not clear how the financial penalty would force a change to stores' policies.
If these are businesses that are willing to let thousands of dollars of merchandise walk out the door, why do you think a $1,000 maximum fine would be a deterrent?
It's not necessarily a deterrent, but what happens at the corporate level is they institute policies at their larger national headquarters to comply with local government regulations.
Creating fines for failing to report something stolen is not new. In 2021, Democratic state lawmakers passed legislation that fines a gun owner $25 if their gun is stolen and they don't report it stolen within 5 days. Democrats said that was about public safety. All Republicans voted against that, including then State Representative Kevin Van Winkle, who is now a Douglas County commissioner.
So why were you against requiring a person to report if a gun is stolen, but you want to require a business to report if merchandise is stolen?
Well, the law passed by the majority Democrats in the state legislature simply re-victimized an already victim.
Just like the state law on guns, this would be a civil fine. It would be handled by the county attorney's office. And it's only for unincorporated Douglas County. So if it's a store in Lone Tree, perhaps Park Meadows, anywhere in there, Castle Rock, Parker, doesn't apply there. There are about 900 retail stores in unincorporated Douglas County that this would impact.
I mean, $1,000 penalty, right? Walmart's just going to be like, whatever. But I imagine, like, for a small business, if somebody, takes a pack of gum and you now have a reporting requirement to the county, like, that could stack up for a small business.
Sure, and there were 2 people who signed up to speak publicly about this. This is not a sure thing just yet. They're open to public comment. There's a website where you can put in your comment. And those people brought up the idea of maybe you should exempt small businesses from that. So it sounds like perhaps county commissioners would be open to that feedback.
Well, I mean, there's only 3 county commissioners. How many of them were there talking in favor of this idea today? 3. Sounds like it might be a done deal. Marshall Zellinger, thank you. 2 more of your elected representatives won't be. More appointed representatives are coming in the side door at the Capitol. If you are missing your trash can, might I suggest checking 3 houses to the east. That was some wild wind we saw. The EPA and the state are cracking down on the company behind Colorado's largest gasoline pipeline spill in history. Next. A lot of Colorado voters are or have recently been represented by a state legislator not of their choosing. Not like they voted for the other man or woman, like they never voted on them at all. Nearly 1/4 of state legislators are in their seats because they were originally appointed by a small group of party insiders. Now that process could be used to fill 2 seats that serve the same geographic area. Shout out to our partners at Colorado Politics for being first to notice this. Vacancy committees will meet soon to fill the Senate seat, formerly held by Democratic Senator Faith Winter, and the House seat, formerly held by Shannon Byrd. Those districts overlap in parts of Adams County and Westminster. Winter, Democrat from Broomfield, died in a car crash last month. Her replacement in the state Senate will be appointed December 23rd. Byrd, who is a Democrat from Westminster, will leave her seat shortly after January 5th. She says that she's leaving to focus on her run for Congress. 2 current state reps have already thrown their hats into the ring to fill the empty Senate seat, Broomfield's William Lindstadt and North Glen's Jenny Wilford. So what that means is if one of them gets appointed, then there would be a 3rd vacancy committee selection to begin this next legislative term. That would mean that 28 of the 100 legislators at the state capitol were originally picked by party insiders. If you're sitting there watching this, congrats. It means you did not blow away this morning. It was pretty wild, right? I mean, thank goodness you weren't on a plane. Here was the bumpy ride into DI. Look at that, coming in sideways. That's called crabbing. Pilots have to do that when they're landing in crosswinds, and the winds were strong at DI. Look at that. That is some wild stuff. Foothills in the high country got the real action, even stronger winds. This is Hurricane Hill near Netherland. Why do they call it that? 80 to 90 mile per hour wind gusts today. Even got reports of a 99 mile per hour wind gust near Empire this afternoon.
And we might not be done with the wind yet, even though we're seeing a little bit of a break tonight. Signs that the winds will be increasing again in 24 hours. The wind was warm, though, out of the west, so it allowed temperatures today to warm way above the average of 44 into the lower 60s along the Front Range and here in Denver. We missed most of the wind here downtown, but wow, along the foothills, the base of the foothills, Clear Creek County down to Lyons into Fort Collins, winds 70 to 90 miles per hour. Even into Broomfield, 56 mile per hour gusts, winds to almost 80 in Georgetown, Idaho Springs. Tough driving with the wind and the snow. Temperatures still pretty comfortable along the Front Range this hour, in the 50s for many areas, but the wind is still howling to the north. Gusts to 69 miles per hour this hour near Buckeye and around the Broomfield area and back into Conifer and Genesee. The high wind warning continues until midnight, and we'll get a little bit of a break tomorrow, but tomorrow night signs the wind may increase again. We've got that gusty northwest flow. That's where all the clouds came from today, but also a weather disturbance coming in that'll bring a little bit of light mountain snow late tonight into early tomorrow. Denver, we get another day with a mix of clouds and sunshine, no moisture, and accumulation in the northern mountains will be light, 1 to 4 inches, so no advisories for snow or travel. Temperatures will drop into the 40s overnight tonight. We have a warm, dry stretch of days for Denver. Thursday, the warmest day in the mid-60s, and we'll look for temperatures to run above average into early next week with no real meaningful snowfall or appreciable moisture for Denver for the next 5 to 7 days.
Our resident meteorologist poet, Corey Reppenhagen, spent his day in the mountains and foothills, blowing to and fro.
Corey Reppenhagen is on the weather beat.
A blast in a blast. Typical December breeze. Better buckle up.
Oh. That was Corey Reppenhagen on the weather beat.
Man wears a 10-foot scarf just for effect. Nearly 100,000 gallons of gas spilled in southwest Colorado, and a year later, that cleanup is still, in a word, messy. And a longtime nemesis for Broncos fans is coming back to football. Let's talk about why I love this on a couple levels. A reminder, you can catch Next streaming each night, 6 p.m., 9 News Plus. And Next is a podcast each weeknight, wherever you get those. The company responsible for Colorado's largest refined gasoline pipeline spill on record has now been cited by the EPA for doing a shoddy job with the cleanup. A year ago, an Enterprise Products pipeline leaked 97,000 gallons of gas in southwest Colorado. It spilled in La Plata County and the Southern Ute Reservation near the Animas River. The spill even forced some families out of their homes. Last month, the EPA sent the company a notice of non-compliance for several federal violations, including not properly labeling the cleanup material as hazardous waste when they shipped it out of state. The state's now requiring the company to add more hazardous waste training for on-site workers and to revise all of its on-site cleanup plans. Broncos fans, rejoice. You may have one more chance to boo Phillip Rivers in person. It could really happen if the 44-year-old grandfather, 5 years removed from playing football, suits up and plays for the desperate Indianapolis Colts, then gets them to the playoffs to face the Broncos. Phillip Rivers, awash again in boos in Denver. It would be music to his ears, because you know that man loves doing three things in life: playing football, trash talking, and making babies. Now, I think that anybody with 10 children would be looking for any kind of an excuse to get out of the house for a little while, but he is even willing to subject his aging body to NFL hits again. I'll tell you why I'm selfishly invested in Phillip Rivers' most improbable comeback. Because I know I am not the only man in America who measures his age by whether another man our age can still play our favorite sport. I did not feel middle-aged until I was older than every single active NFL player. Now, obviously, not that I could have sniffed the field on my best day, but just the idea that somebody out there with as many laps around the sun was still doing it, that was enough to fend off the mentality of middle age for me. And this recently passed, right? I'm a month older than Aaron Rodgers, the current oldest player in the league. But with Phillip Rivers coming back to the game, I'm young again, even if just for a few weeks. If he improbably steps on the field at the age of 44, I get why Broncos fans will thunderously boo. But secretly, I'll be cheering with a youthful spirit I haven't felt all season. Back with your feedback next. Our next holiday ornament for 2025 is out, ready to be printed and added to your tree. And next viewer named Ondine already has all of them up on her tree. She's got the new one for this year, plus the shot ski. That was our second year. Crispy donkey there on the left. That was the original 2020. Remember my fireplace background? We had the car on the Target rock as well. This year's ornament celebrates gratitude. It has our favorite weekly question, what's your good news, on the front, and then on the back there's a little space. My good news for 2025 is, and we encourage you to write down a remembrance for this year, something that you are grateful for in 2025. If you are willing to share a photo of your answer on your tree, we would love to see it. This works the same way every year. You can print out your own ornament at home. The directions in the ornament are on 9news.com and on our social media accounts. And then if you are so moved, you can send a pic to us at next@9news.com. Feedback tonight from folks about how I'm inspired by Phillip Rivers coming back to football, if only because he's a little bit older than I am, and it makes me feel young to have an older player in the NFL. I am not the only person who has looked at life that way. Keenan wrote, I used the same metric. I disliked Tom Brady, but damn if he didn't make me feel young for a couple of years. And this from Amber, who wrote, millions of American men are not going to feel young anymore when LeBron retires. I think that's a really, really good example. I think it was Tom Brady for a lot of people. I think it was Aaron Rodgers for other people. I got somebody who wrote into me today and said for his dad, it was Nolan Ryan. When Nolan Ryan retired in his 40s, that's when his dad felt old. And finally from Jules, Kyle, you look dapper in the suit tonight. I miss the wilder side. Get festive. Jules, this is a purple pinstripe. That's fairly festive. We'll see you next time.